What happens when a comedian known for his sharp political satire sits down with America's sweetheart talk show host, and the conversation takes a turn nobody saw coming? Randy Rainbow just had the most explosive interview meltdown in daytime television history. Randy sat across from Kelly Clarkson on her vibrant talk show set. The atmosphere began warmly. Kelly with her trademark smile, Randy with his theatrical flair. Kelly started with what seemed like harmless banter. "Randy, your political parodies have become such a phenomenon, but don't you ever worry about going too far with some of your content?" Randy shifted in his chair, eyebrows raised. "Too far? Kelly, reality has already gone too far. I'm just holding up a mirror to the absurdity," Kelly pressed, suggesting that some of his videos cross lines, especially when harshly targeting certain politicians. The smile faded from Randy's face. "Comedy has always been about pushing boundaries. That's literally the point. Are we seriously having this conversation right now?" Kelly leaned forward, her tone sharper. "I just think there's a responsibility that comes with having such a platform. Some of your content can be pretty divisive." Randy shot back. "Divisive? Calling out corruption and incompetence isn't divisive. It's necessary. And you're going to lecture me about responsibility while hosting a show that thrives on celebrity gossip and consumer fluff?" The audience began murmuring, sensing tension. Kelly's smile strained. "I think you're misunderstanding me." "No, I understand perfectly," Randy said, his voice rising. "You invited me here to promote my work, and now you're trying to shame me for the very thing that made me famous. This is classic mainstream media behavior." Kelly's tone grew defensive. "Randy, I'm not trying to shame you. I'm asking questions my audience would want answered." "Your audience or your network executives? Because there's a difference, Kelly, and we both know it." The tension was now unmistakable. Kelly tried to steer things back on track, suggesting they move on to his upcoming projects. Randy wasn't having it. "Oh, now you want to move on. Convenient. Drag me through an interrogation about responsibility. And when I push back, suddenly it's time for small talk." Kelly flushed, insisting she wasn't interrogating him. Randy pressed harder. "Interesting discussions would be about my process, my inspiration, not whether I'm being too mean to politicians actively harming people. That's not curiosity. That's an ambush disguised as a friendly chat." The exchange grew increasingly hostile. Kelly defended her show, claiming they tackle serious issues all the time. Randy mocked that claim. "Do you, though? Or do you skim over them in the most superficial way possible to seem socially conscious without ever making your audience think critically? When was the last time you had a conversation here that made someone genuinely uncomfortable?" Chandvi studio audience sat frozen, some squirming, others quietly recording the chaos on their phones. Kelly's professional smile faltered. "You're being incredibly unfair. You don't know how I run my show." But Randy wasn't backing down. "From where I'm sitting, it feels like I walked into an ambush. You knew exactly what my content was like when you booked me. So why pretend to be shocked now that I have opinions?" What began as light-hearted banter had erupted into a televised showdown, one that neither Kelly nor Randy seemed willing to walk back from. "Behind the scenes, that's exactly the problem," Randy argued. "All the real conversations happen out of view, while the audience is fed manufactured positivity that has nothing to do with reality." Kelly took a visible deep breath, trying to regain control. "Look, Randy, I understand you're passionate about your work, and I respect that, but attacking me personally isn't really productive here." "Attacking you personally?" Randy shot back. I'm not attacking you as a person. I'm attacking a system that you happen to be a very successful part of. There's a difference." Kelly bristled. "But you're sitting on my show as my guest, essentially telling me that everything I do is meaningless corporate propaganda." "I'm telling you that daytime television has become a vehicle for avoiding real conversations about real problems. If that describes your show, then maybe that's worth examining." The tension in the room was now thick enough to cut with a knife. From behind the cameras, Kelly's producer frantically gestured. Kelly pushed on. "Randy, I invited you here because I thought you were funny and talented, not because I wanted to be lectured about the state of media." "And I came here," Randy replied, "because I thought maybe, just maybe, someone in mainstream media actually wanted to have a real conversation about why comedy matters in dark times. Apparently, I was wrong." Kelly's tone grew defensive. "Randy, you're making a lot of assumptions about my intentions and my show that just aren't accurate." "Then prove me wrong, Kelly. Ask me something real. Ask me why I think humor is one of the last defenses we have against fascism, instead of asking me to justify my existence as an artist." "Fascism," Kelly repeated. "Don't you think that's a pretty extreme word to throw around?" Randy's eyes widened. "And there it is. There's the problem right there. You think the word fascism is extreme, but you don't think the actual policies and behaviors that define fascism are extreme. That's exactly the kind of willful blindness I'm talking about." "Randy, I'm not willfully blind to anything," Kelly insisted. "I just think we should be careful about using inflammatory language." "What's inflammatory," Randy retorted, "is pretending that calling a spade is somehow worse than the spade itself. What's inflammatory is tone policing people who are sounding the alarm while the house is burning down around us." The audience was now completely silent, watching this philosophical battle unfold in real time. Kelly tried to steady herself. "I think you're being unfair to me and to my audience. We care about these issues too." "Do you?" Randy challenged. "Because caring about issues and actually addressing them are two completely different things. Caring is easy. It's a feeling. Action requires risk. And risk is bad for ratings." Kelly's composure was visibly strained. "So what? You're saying everyone in mainstream media is a coward? That's not fair or accurate. I'm saying mainstream media operates within constraints that make real courage almost impossible. And yes, that includes this show. And yes, that includes this conversation we're having right now." Kelly's face hardened. "So what you're saying is that this conversation is somehow fake or meaningless because it's happening on my show?" "What I'm saying," Randy countered, "is that we're having this conversation within a framework designed to prevent it from going anywhere that might actually matter. We're performing authenticity instead of actually being authentic." "Performing authenticity?" Kelly shot back. "I'm being completely genuine with you right now." "Are you? Because genuine Kelly would probably have some real opinions about the state of the world. But talk show host Kelly has to stay neutral, palatable, and brand safe. Which Kelly am I talking to right now?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly's jaw tightened. "You know what, Randy? You're right. Let me be genuine with you. I think you're being incredibly arrogant right now. You waltz onto my show and immediately start attacking everything about it without knowing anything. About me, or what I actually believe." "There we go," Randy said with a sharp smile. "Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me what you actually believe, Kelly. Not what your network wants you to say, not what your audience wants to hear. What do you actually think about the world we're living in?" Kelly paused, clearly wrestling with how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke. I think the world is complicated, Randy. I think reducing everything to good guys and bad guys makes for good comedy, but it's not helpful for actually solving problems. Complicated, Kelly. Some things aren't complicated. Some things are actually pretty simple. When someone tries to overthrow an election, that's not complicated. When someone puts kids in cages, that's not complicated. When someone lies every time they open their mouth, that's not complicated. Kelly pressed back. But don't you think that kind of black and white thinking is exactly what's dividing this country? Randy looked stunned. Are you serious right now? You think the problem is that people like me are too judgmental about objectively terrible behavior? You think the solution is to be more understanding of cruelty and corruption? I think the solution is to find ways to bring people together, Kelly said firmly, instead of driving them further apart. Bring people together? Kelly, you can't bring people together with fascists. You can't find middle ground with people who want to eliminate your neighbor's rights to exist. This isn't a disagreement about tax policy. This is about basic human dignity. Kelly's voice grew louder. And that's exactly the kind of rhetoric that makes it impossible to have productive conversations with anyone who doesn't already agree with you. Productive conversations? Randy shot back. What exactly would a productive conversation with someone who thinks certain groups of people shouldn't have rights look like? Please, enlighten me. It would look like trying to understand where they're coming from, Kelly said, instead of immediately writing them off as evil. Randy stared at her in disbelief. Understand where they're coming from? Kelly, I understand perfectly. They're coming from fear, hatred, and ignorance. Understanding that doesn't mean I have to respect it or accommodate it. But, don't you think that attitude just perpetuates the cycle of division? Kelly asked. No, Randy snapped. What perpetuates division is pretending that hatred and love are just two different but equally valid perspectives. What perpetuates division is false equivalency and both sidesism, the moral relativism you're advocating right now. The studio was dead silent except for the occasional uncomfortable cough. Kelly tried again. I'm not advocating for moral relativism. I'm advocating for basic human decency and trying to find common ground. Human decency? Randy's voice dripped with scorn. Human decency means standing up to bullies, not trying to understand them. Human decency means protecting vulnerable people, not finding compromise with their oppressors. Kelly's professional mask was gone. Randy, you're putting words in my mouth and creating positions I never took. Am I? Because from here, it sounds like you're more concerned with being polite to fascists than protecting the people they want to hurt. That's not what I said, and you know it. Then what are you saying, Kelly? Because it sounds to me like you're asking me to tone down my criticism of dangerous people because it might hurt their feelings, or make your show seem too political. I'm saying maybe your approach isn't as effective as you think it is, Kelly countered. Randy's eyes flashed with anger. Effective? My approach has reached millions of people and helped them process the trauma of living through the worst political era in modern American history. What has your approach accomplished, besides keeping everyone comfortable while everything falls apart? My approach, Kelly shot back, has brought joy and positivity to people during difficult times. Joy and positivity, Kelly. There's a difference between bringing joy and enabling denial. There's a difference between positivity and complacency. Kelly stood up abruptly, her voice rising. Randy, I think you need to check yourself here. You're being incredibly disrespectful to me, to my show, and to my audience. Randy also stood, matching her energy. The studio lights seemed to intensify the heat of the moment as both host and guest faced off across the coffee table. Kelly's voice trembled with barely contained frustration. Centrist nonsense. Randy, you don't even know what I believe. Personally, you're making sweeping judgments about me based on absolutely nothing. I am making judgments based on exactly what you've shown me in the last 10 minutes, Randy shot back. Kelly, you've spent this entire conversation trying to get me to apologize for having strong convictions about right and wrong. I haven't asked you to apologize for anything, Kelly insisted. I've asked you to consider that maybe your way isn't the only way to create positive change. Positive change, Kelly, Randy replied, throwing his hands up in exasperation. Positive change requires acknowledging when things are wrong, not finding ways to make everyone feel better about terrible situations. And you think insulting and mocking people is going to make them suddenly see the light? Kelly challenged. I think holding people accountable for their actions is more important than protecting their feelings, Randy countered. I think truth matters more than comfort. Kelly's voice grew sharper. Truth. Randy, your truth, your perspective, your interpretation of events. But you present it like it's the only possible way to see things. When it comes to basic human rights and democratic principles, yes, there is only one acceptable way to see things, Randy shot back. This isn't a matter of opinion, Kelly. Everything is a matter of opinion, Randy. That's what living in a democracy means. Randy stared at her incredulously. No, Kelly. Everything is not a matter of opinion. The earth is round. Gravity exists. And trying to overturn elections is wrong. These aren't opinions. They're facts. But how you respond to those facts, how you talk about them, how you treat people who disagree with you, those are choices. And I choose to respond with the urgency that the situation demands instead of pretending everything is fine. Kelly shook her head vigorously. Randy, nobody's pretending everything is fine. But screaming at people isn't solving anything. I'm not screaming at people, Kelly. I'm using humor and satire to point out absurdity and corruption. If that feels like screaming to you, maybe you should ask yourself why. Because it's aggressive and divisive, Kelly pressed. It pushes people away instead of bringing them in. Good, Randy's voice rose. Some people should be pushed away. Some people shouldn't be brought in. Not every perspective deserves a seat at the table. See? That's exactly what I'm talking about, Kelly fired back. That kind of absolutist thinking is dangerous. Dangerous? You know what's dangerous? Giving platforms to people who spread misinformation and hate while tone policing the people who call them out on it. And you know what's also dangerous? Kelly shot back, pointing her finger at him. Creating content that makes people angrier and more divided instead of helping them find solutions. Solutions, Kelly? Randy laughed bitterly. The solution is for good people to stop being polite to bad people. The solution is for people with platforms like yours to stop pretending that neutrality is a virtue when one side wants to destroy democracy. Randy, you're completely twisting everything I'm saying. No, I'm hearing exactly what you're saying, Randy snapped. You're saying my comedy is problematic because it takes sides. You're saying standing up to authoritarianism is divisive. You're saying calling out corruption is inflammatory. Kelly's face flushed with anger. I never said any of those things. You absolutely did, Randy shot back. You've spent this entire interview concern trolling me about my tone and my approach while completely ignoring the substance of what I'm trying to accomplish. Concern trolling. Randy, I was trying to have a thoughtful discussion about the role of political comedy in our culture. No, you were trying to get me to admit that I'm part of the problem so you could feel better about your own complicity in the system. Kelly's voice cracked slightly. My complicity, Randy? You don't know anything about my life, my values, or what I do when the cameras aren't rolling. I know what you do when the cameras are rolling, Randy retorted. And that's what matters. I know you use your platform to promote safe, sanitized content that never challenges anyone to think differently about anything important. That's not true, and it's incredibly unfair. Randy began gathering his things. You know what's unfair, Kelly? Living in a country where comedians have to be the ones telling the truth, because journalists won't do it, and talk show hosts won't do it. Randy, where are you going? I'm leaving. This conversation has made it crystal clear that we live in completely different realities. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that your reality is equally valid. Kelly's voice became desperate. Randy, please don't leave. We can find a way to have this conversation constructively. Randy stopped and turned back. Constructively? Kelly, construction requires a foundation. We don't even agree on basic facts about the world we're living in. How exactly are we supposed to build anything on that? By listening to each other and trying to understand different perspectives. I've been listening, Kelly. I've heard you loud and clear. You think I'm too angry, too divisive, too unwilling to compromise with people who want to harm others. Message received. Randy, that's not what I think. Then what do you think, Kelly? What do you actually, genuinely think about the state of the world right now? Not what you think your audience wants to hear. Not what you think is appropriate. What do you actually think? Kelly hesitated, the question hanging between them like a final challenge. The silence stretched uncomfortably as cameras captured every second of her internal struggle. Finally, she spoke, but her voice lacked conviction. I think we need to find ways to heal the divisions in our country. Randy shook his head sadly. That's not an answer, Kelly. That's a talking point. And the fact that you can't give me a real answer proves everything I've been saying. With that, Randy turned toward the exit, leaving Kelly standing alone on her own set as the audience watched in stunned silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the most dramatic walk-off in daytime television history.